We need to buy 100 gold.
How much will it cost us?
At 100 gold.
What you have to do is not difficult. Do it.
De-dollarization is one of the most current events in the world in the last 25 years, since 2010 at least. First mentioned as BRIC in 2001, the first official meeting in 2009. South Africa became a member in 2010 and thus the organization became BRICS nations. New global reserve currency. The nations announced at their first meeting in 2009, an event that caused an immediate reaction among financial institutions and shyly received the name of de-dollarization issue.
New global reserve currency. It doesn't seem like an intention of disparage the dollar or euro, but rather that the BRICS countries that are in the G20 have their own currencies that can be traded with. But the USA is so fierce on this issue that it is not even possible to discuss it. On the other hand, I do not believe that BRICS will create even remotely some form of new currency. But first, let's see where the main causes of conflict are, to show which factors are insurmountable.
To understand de-dollarization, we must first see what dollarization means. Dollarization occurs when the domestic currency of one country is substituted for another, usually the US dollar. As such, is a form of currency substitution and may become the currency of choice by government decree or through adoption by market participants.
Really?
Since everything has been clarified for us, let's see what it means in reality.
We need to buy 100 gold.
How much will it cost us?
At 100 gold.
What you have to do is not difficult. Do it.
Boss, they want to buy 100 gold.
How much will they pay?
100 gold.
That's okay. Sell it to them.
I want to point out, today our company acquired 100 gold at a price of 100.5 gold. With that 100 gold, we will get the 100 gold we agreed to buy.
Again.
First, let's see who the G20 members are, present at the last meeting in South Africa. I will leave the table for about 5 seconds to study a little. The second table shows the share of officially recognized currencies in international trade. And more than 95% of the share goes to the so-called collective West. China's presence on this list is more of an anomaly than the rule. On the 1st of October 2016, the yuan became the first emerging market currency to be included in the IMF special drawing rights basket.
Trump was already preparing to leave the nuclear agreement with Iran, so this was a preparation for that. To encourage China to agree, due to the fact that China procured a good part of its oil from Iran, and second, to detach China from BRICS and basically prevent the attempt to create a new monetary system and everything that goes with it. Killing two birds with one stone.
Can we expect other currencies to appear on this list? At least the countries that are members of the G20. Well, that's the million-dollar question, right?
The gold mentioned in this story is a trading currency, and in this story it is actually a fiat gold currency. What exactly is fiat currency? Let's check what the books have to say. Fiat money is a type of government-issued currency, authorized by government regulation to be legal tender. Typically, fiat currency is not backed by a precious metal, such as gold or silver, nor by any other tangible asset or commodity. Fiat money generally does not have intrinsic value and does not have use value. People trust that it will be accepted by merchants and other people as a means of payment for liabilities. The best example of fiat currency is in the video game Fallout 1, where after a nuclear disaster, the Nuka-Cola bottle cap becomes trading currency. The Nuka-Cola bottle cap currency has the same value as today's dollar or any other currency accepted as trade currency. After the Second World War, the countries of the time agreed to use the dollar to settle trade deficits with other countries. This means that the states did not agree not to use their currencies in mutual trade, and they have the legal right to use anything in mutual trade if they agree. But let's see what de-dollarization actually means.
We need to buy 100 gold.
How much will it cost us?
At 100 gold.
What you have to do is not difficult. Do it.
Boss, they want to buy 100 gold.
How much will they pay?
100 gold. Really?
Sell it to
Again.
them.
In the technical sense, both operations are actually one and the same operation. In the case of dollarization, 0.5% is the fee for purchasing dollars or euros, and in the case of de-dollarization, it is the 0.5% service fee. Foreign currencies that the world acquires to trade cost 0.8%. How? If you go abroad and get foreign currency to pay for your needs there, you will pay a 0.487% tax. In the country where you are staying, they will change that foreign currency for the local currency, and they will charge you 0.325%. In total, 0.812%. It will be the same if you pay with a credit card, at least in my country. I will also use this data in my analysis. We have already said that more than 95% of the turnover falls on the countries of the so-called collective West, of which the dollar and the euro account for 77.5% year 2024. Before proceeding further, let's get acquainted with the terms SWIFT and BC. BIC, Bank Identifier Code, is generally an exchange between banks, so we'll leave this aside for now. A SWIFT code enables fast and efficient transactions between banks across the globe. Sending money, shopping, credit cards, it's all under SWIFT. But while SWIFT operates as a neutral utility, political decisions by governments and international bodies dictate which countries or entities are sanctioned, not the organization itself. As a company incorporated under Belgian law, SWIFT must comply with relevant EU regulations, which can include sanctions imposed by the European Union. But SWIFT operates as a neutral utility. The US government brings democracy. It only builds schools and hospitals. It's the Pentagon and CIA that's killing you?
To wrap up this whole story, we need to talk about inflation. What is inflation? Let's see what books have to say. Wow, that's a lot of books on inflation. And the book said, inflation is the increase in the prices of goods and services over time. What? So many books and only one sentence? Inflation cannot be measured by an increase in the cost of one product or service, or even several products or services. Rather, inflation is a general increase in the overall price level of the goods and services in the economy. To be honest, that's the biggest nonsense I've read or heard lately. The word inflation tries to describe something that cannot exist in the economy. Economic perpetuum, right? I have never studied economics except that I have always been careful not to fall into the vortex of credit cards and loans. My philosophy was, it's better to get something even a year later than blindly entering into some arrangements, hoping that everything will be fine. The price of oil goes up and down. Accidents in transportation, oil fields, supply stoppages due to various reasons are never of such a scale that they can cause a shortage on the market. Politics, sanctions, wars that lead to uncertainty on the market can cause higher prices for oil, which is one of the basic items in the production of goods, but this does not explain the appearance of that inflation. The lack of goods on the market causes producers to raise the prices of their goods for the sake of some profit, but all this does not explain the appearance of that inflation. So why would an increase in the prices of anything affect the appearance of that inflation? So let's ask the books. An acceptable inflation rate is generally considered to be a low and stable annual rate, most commonly around 2%, books say. We have already said before that 95% of the exchange in world trade is done in the currencies of the so-called collective West. And how much would that 2% actually be in absolute terms? 2% of the annual GDP level. For 2024, more than $2 trillion. Still, I'd stick to my 0.8%. It is, after all, a legal fee for services provided by the bank. To make the math a little simpler, I'll round it to 1% because with all the other services the bank provides, that's a fair amount. And so we arrive at the nicely rounded number of $1 trillion. Let's see how much $1 trillion really is. Only 19 countries have a nominal GDP greater than $1 trillion. About 500 million inhabitants in more than 80 countries of the world have a total GDP of $1 trillion. But let's see what we have in the game.
We have reached the end. Are the parties ready to compromise? Okay, let's see. The first indicated problem is the issue of SWIFT and BIC. Is that solvable? First, SWIFT needs to allow what it was created for. But the biggest problem is the regime of sanctions from a conditionally neutral entity. By habit, we call it sanctions, but in fact, it is a crime on the level of genocide. Holding foreign exchange reserves of member states is also a crime on the same level. This problem cannot be solved until the current situation, causes and consequences are solved. The subjects behind these decisions will have to bear responsibility. Not only subjects, but also states. Can this problem be solved at all? What would be the price for the status quo? The price for the status quo would be Alaska, Taiwan, Israel, no military power under the equator, and only free ocean will be Atlantic. And this is even the lesser evil for the West. Why do these three items appear if the main problem is SWIFT? In fact, these three issues have nothing to do with SWIFT. SWIFT is a means of transport. These three elements are just cargo. But since we wrote them, let's see what it's really about. We have already said that 1% is a legal compensation for services provided by the bank or simply profit. $1 trillion. Shouldn't at least the G20 countries be present? 23 world GDP was 106.97 trillion. For 2024 it was 111.33. 3.92% increase. Is that 3.92% a pure increase? Or is there inflation? If there is, who determines how much it is? Or is it mostly 2%? Inflation is caused by the introduction of printed money into the market, not price increases. So not some errant merchant, but the state. $2 trillion. Or they always print 2% unless... The President of USA?
At least $1 trillion from me.
Who prints that inflation and pour into the market? Who reaps that profit if 95% of the currencies used in international trade belong to the so-called West? Or is it a mystery? So, we are up to the famous Article 5. First, let's see the table, which gives a brief description of how the US military budget is formed. Very briefly, we are interested in the column base. These are fixed costs and arrive at the end of the column to total base. The following row in the table has other expenses, and at the end of the row the total expenses for that year. We are only interested in base costs. In this table we have data obtained from open sources, budget base, world GDP, and my famous 1% fee. The new column is the percent share of the currency, which we got from this table, which I don't have to explain. If we multiply these two values, we get an interesting number. Budget base is the designed value, and military budget base is the calculated value. If we expand the table, we get two new columns that give the difference between those two numbers in nominal and percentage amounts. The bigger difference in the last 5 columns is not a mistake in approach, but the USA takes its 5% GDP. Is it possible to reach an agreement on dollarization and de-dollarization? That's the million-dollar question. Right? Even if everything previously said is at the level of nonsense, what the new payment system, independent from SWIFT, brings to BRICS members. If we calculate the 1% fee of world GDP at this moment, that would be $300 billion. No up to 2% acceptable inflation, no sanctions, frozen funds, name it. Worst of all, there is not a single common point that would allow negotiations to begin at all. So the $1 million question becomes nuclear war question.